Come on, it's a nice day to start your blog. Wow! Ladies, gentlemen, and everything in between, thank you so much for being so patient all this time. Finally, I'm going to be tackling a question, a topic that I've been teasing for, I think, at least a week and a half, 2 weeks now, for various reasons. I've had some of the busiest shit going on in my life. All good stuff. Been very, very, very productive and having a great time and feeling really good. But yeah, I basically wanted to give this particular topic a fair amount of time, and I've been doing a lot of other questions that have been leading up to this one in particular. And this came relatively recently, I think like as soon as the year started, from Deathinator on Twitter. Kirblog, could you do a Kirblog regarding how you write your stories and what type of decisions go into its production? So all the topics I've been doing, or most of them that I've been doing in the last month and a half or so, however long it's been, between how piracy affects content creation on the internet, balancing passion versus livelihood and what it is that you do, taking criticism over your creative work, what it takes to actually make a show on the internet, like in telling a story with it, taking good advice to heart, stuff like that. All of it has been leading up to this particular topic. Now, what I've decided to do is I'm going to be using Tome, my web series, Terrain of Magical Expertise, which I'm assuming if you've been following me for this long, you've probably seen it, or if you haven't, I would recommend you give it a watch, because I'm going to use it as the key example in this for a particular reason. As I often have to put, in many of these like advice column type Kirblogs, I do not and am not. I do not consider myself, and I flat out, honestly, am not an authority when it comes to any of this stuff, and especially when it comes to animation. I am very much still a student. I've been very, very fortunate that I've gotten to do as much stuff as I've wanted to, in my journey thus far. I'm very thankful for, the people who have enjoyed the stuff that I've produced over the last several years that I've been, creating things now. But I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy on the internet making stuff. I am still constantly learning things. I've done a Kirblog topic about that as well, about never stop learning. And I've tackled a lot of like subsects of this particular question, and or rather the idea behind this question. So I'll just preface ahead of time and say, again, as always, I apologize for repeating any information you might have already heard on previous videos. But this is all for one relevant thing. And again, I'm going to use Tome as an example because it's really the closest thing that I have to fully executing exactly what this question really is asking. It's the one time so far that I've really created like a long-term big project like this. That not only in that it helped put me on the map more so after a lot of my breakaway things from Newgrounds and everything. But more importantly, because it's the first major project where I got to apply a lot of what I learned from my previous stuff for, not quite a whole decade, but many years worth of experience and experiments and the stuff I've been making for, all that time before. So this is not just my answer, but this is also, in the case of this particular kind of project. So to start off, when I say that, this particular kind of project, this is the type of thing, Tome is the type of thing that I have been wanting to do for almost my entire life in terms of like my dream as an artist, as a creative person, which is to make a long form, a story that you can follow over the course of a long time, and like with a big universe that you can fully get wrapped into and sink your teeth into and remember all the characters and everything, and like with lore and a big overarching plot and all this stuff, And I've become a lot more intrigued in the last several years, actually right around the time that I started doing Tome, with wanting to do movies. But a series specifically is what I really wanted to do for a very long time. For the specific medium of doing an animated series, that's what I did the most amount of research and studied the most amount of examples, and I read books up on it, and watched ridiculous amounts of different shows and seeing what the different approaches were, both American and Japanese style and otherwise, and etc. Kind of things. But a lot of you who know, like, I'll say this, in case you haven't heard, like, the whole story of how Tome was created. I did a separate Kirblog about that for the anniversary, and that kind of answers some of the more like trivia type things regarding that. I'm not going to focus too much on that in particular, but I recommend that you go check that one out in case you're interested, or if you might have missed it and you're a fan of the show, whatever, etc. But anyway, carrying on. My point is that even though, and also worth stating, because from that story, originally many times before I wanted to do it as a game, and then I decided. In the summer of 2011, I was beginning to think about it, and then was eventually urged, thanks to Liz, to just make it as an animated show and just do it as an online series. And this is worth stating too, just to be honest. I think that the fact that it was both planned to be a game, the series, as well as sticking to a lot of concepts that, like in terms of like the overall progression of the story, that were established in the TV Tome Adventures series that kind of was its predecessor, I think were actually weaknesses of the series. There is value and there is advantages to working within limitations, but I think that in this case it was more so that I was thinking like, and then this is the overall progression of how everything worked in the original TTA, so therefore I should do something semi-similar with this. Not even because I thought it was so well the way it was back when I first made it in 2004, but more so just as a blueprint, and obviously as I'm going to get into the first real steps as to what my process is. There were a lot of liberties that I took that I felt would make the show stronger. So I'll start with that. First and foremost, I have a little list that I was writing earlier today. So the first thing, and I feel, So the first thing that you should be doing is actually something that I'm going to address last, because I didn't think about this at the beginning of the production process to begin with when I should have. And I will go back to that. That's actually going to be possibly a separate subject in and of itself, but I will be talking about that at the end. So sorry to be jerking you around for 7 minutes. Anyway, but the first thing I will talk about that I think is equally as important as the mystery thing is the main cast of characters, and that includes heroes, villains, side characters, etc. Important to establish the dynamics between all of them and what their development is going to be. Some of it is going to become a lot more clear, as you write individual episodes or scenes or whatever it is that you're going to be doing. But overall, you should have a firm idea of what all of the main cast is going to be. So in the case of Tome, Trainer Magical Expertise, and this of course would go, in tandem with what the, just the show idea in and of itself was going to be, which is a bunch of friends together on a virtual reality MMORPG, and they work together to fight against some malicious hackers, and they get wrapped up into something bigger than themselves. So we had our 5 main characters, who were the 5 main characters of the original TTA as well. However, what I wanted to do in particular is make sure that all 5 of the main characters in Tome had an important purpose to serve within the confines of the story. Because a big glaring weakness of the first one is the fact that really there were very few characters that ended up actually doing anything important, several of which did not include the main 5, who are all friends. So what I decided to do was give a lot of them different roles, both in terms of what it is that they were bringing to the overall plot, the dynamic between each of them in terms of their personality traits. For instance, originally Game Crazed, who people know now as the strong, silent type, mysterious type of character, was the sarcastic one. So Kirblog originally was just come on guys, we got to work together and stop those hackers, and he was actually a little too much like Alpha, except maybe more on the sarcastic side. So I thought, okay, I'm going to take away the sarcasm from GC and just pour that more onto Kirb, so that'll be a little bit more, of a dimension to him specifically. In addition, I toned down, a little bit of the eagerness on Alpha and decided to make him a bit more shy and awkward, which ties directly into his development as wanting to come out of his shell, and him being very kind of awkward and not knowing what he's doing, sort of thing. in that case, and then in speaking with Kirblog and Game Crazed in particular, for those of you maybe who haven't happened to have seen the show before, I won't spoil these particular twists, but I'll just say certain characters in the original TTA series that served other purposes, who I will not reveal who they are, I decided, if I merge some characters into some other recurring or important or plot sensitive characters if I merge them with some of the main characters, then I make those main characters inherently more important, and it gives them a bigger purpose. They involve also kind of dual identities between the people behind Kerbifer and Game Crazed. And again, that's all I'll say for now. I won't delve too much deeper into it, but I'm assuming if you've seen the show, you know what I'm talking about, and you get what the implication is in that. That added to their not only their relevance, but just like it fleshed them out as characters and made them so much more interesting. And especially when you see those mysteries about them kind of revealed in later parts of the story, it really creates a lot more intrigue and a lot more like surprise and interesting kind of material that go along with like, oh, that's why they were doing that, or oh, that's why they were acting this way during this part, etc. That's a little bit more on the complicated side, but on the less complicated side, there's Flame Girl and Nightlock. Flame Girl, and I've said this before, I definitely think I could have done a lot better with her, but she is leagues above, which, this wasn't difficult, her TTA counterpart, who was just the girl. And that's something that I and many other creators who are just starting out are super guilty of, and, I do apologize for that. And, there are much better characters to develop in the future, but in the case of Flame Girl, what I tried to do with her, in terms of like what I am still proud of as far as how it fit into the scope of the show, is Flamey I tried to make the most like normal of the main five. Not that would necessarily make her boring, but just to make her the most grounded of the five of them. And in that case, also kind of make her like the closest thing to a leader that the team really had. Because, even though like Alpha's like the main character and Kerbifer had maybe even the most amount of development of any of the main characters, and Nightlock likes to be loud and boisterous and, go rallying the troops and all that. Flamey is kind of the glue that binds everybody together, in that she's the one who kind of is the most on top of her shit and she knows what she's doing, etc. So I tried to kind of exude that. And also kind of akin to like a guild leader, sort of thing. And that probably wasn't as clear as it should have been, and that's something, to keep in mind for later. But that was what I attempted to do with her in terms of her importance. And then in the case of Nightlock, mainly comedy relief, because he was the funny guy before, so I tried to really amp that up, and then that was kind of the result of the early drawings that I did of him, which established this whole, like, ye old superhero medieval knight type of personality, and the catchphrases, and the goofiness, and all that. And not that he was just a black and white character. He's a very simple kind of guy, but there's definitely more to him, which we get into, as the story progresses. So establishing the clear roles of all five of those main characters basically allowed for me to come up later with more kind of in-depth, character moments, like interactions between them and points of development for each of them in the individual episodes, etc. In terms of the antagonists, that was a little more unexpected, I think, than I was even planning. A lot of the one-off villains were planned just as that, as one-off villains that were only going to be in or not necessarily villains, but like the opponents that our heroes would face against in different episodes were often designed for just one episode or one scenario or whatever. There were certain ones like Neo Mutant, who I know is going to end up coming back and being a little bit of a more in-depth later part because of his ties to Flame Girl in real life. Raccoon, by complete accident, not even by accident, just kind of like through the developmental process, ended up becoming a much bigger part of the show and kind of had his own little like mini side story that crossed over with the main stuff happening once in a while. And the leaders of the hacker group, Kizuna and Zeto, in their cases, they certain twists about them ended up coming about in different ways, like earlier than I was expecting to reveal them, and because of that, they actually ended up getting, I think, a lot more development, and now as a result of that, they become some of the most popular characters of the series. I think that I was intending to have a lot of the villainous, not necessarily again villainous, but just the antagonistic, positioned characters be a lot more mysterious, because there were just there were a lot of reveals and a lot of twists and turns and surprises and things that I wanted to kind of have in store with them. But as the show kind of developed and as we kind of got to the end of the first season, things were kind of shifting around a little bit, and we went in a little bit of a different direction with them. And they then ended up paying off like very unexpectedly. Side characters and like recurring characters, little the B and C tier list kind of guys and gals. They ended up being kind of about what I was expecting. They were just, utility purposes for different episodes and, helping out with other characters' developments. The main characters, like for instance, the, hyperlinks and Elescope, being in episode 6, serving mainly as like a point of development for Nylok, examples like that. And, not overstaying their welcome. And in a lot of cases, like those are the characters that make me wish, I wish I could do a million episodes of this. Because then I would have like lots of other episodes about them getting to do things and kind of exploring more about them, etc. But I guess that kind of leads into the next important thing, which is in this specific case, the amount of installments and establishing the beginning, middle, and end of the overall story arc. Even back when this was intended to be a game instead of a series, I was going to produce it like as an episodic thing and having a set number of how many there were going to be. And the number changed a few times, but I think the general kind of idea I had was about 20 or so. And then it ended up being 16 in the end, which is, 15 plus the episode 0-1, along with some shorts that, kind of got tossed into the mix as well. And they equate to maybe like another couple episodes in terms of like all of them combined together. So I don't know quite the amount of time they all took up, but you know what I mean. Either way, but by knowing that ahead of time, and granted, like, it didn't go the way I thought, because, some people remember, I think I'd mentioned, I thought, I could get one episode of Tome done every single month. Ha ha ha. No. And I'll get a little bit more into the production process of that a little later, but more so, and more so knowing exactly, the end in sight, like knowing exactly like what it is you're going to be doing. Now that doesn't apply to everything. That applies to specific cases like this, where like you're telling a full story that has a beginning, middle, and end to it. And granted, like, you could say, hey, you could do more with this, like both after where it is that the show had cut off and also in between it in terms of like expanding the content and doing more stuff. Again, this has more to do with like the production side of things of like, okay, what am I capable of being able to do? But more importantly, this point here is more so about knowing like where everything is going by the end of it. And I think a lot more like anime and manga series where like they know, or maybe not like necessarily how long it's going to go, but they at least have an idea of what the giant scope of everything is supposed to be. Unless you're Toriyama and you just make up shit on the fly. And granted, there is some magic to that, and I think that it is good to leave things open so that you can, you can develop things and add things that you didn't, expect before. And especially if you're doing something for a really long time and your tastes change and your interests and your skill develops and grows, alongside your work. You get ideas for better things that you can add, as you go along. So if you don't want to marry yourself like 100% to everything. If that was the case, then we wouldn't have had, episode 11 the way that it was. So there was certainly that, and there were a lot of other things that changed kind of as a result of the season 1 and season 2 cut or break, that is, for Tome in particular. And then again, there's other shows and stories where the stories are just, they're the individual episodes. They're not like some long overarching thing. In my case, what I did was I had each episode, more or less be a standalone story, or at least like a chunk of it that was enjoyable and had a beginning, middle, and end to it. But there was also an overall story for the entire 16 episodes of that show that all connected together that I had to keep in mind while I was doing the whole show. Again, that's not a be-all, end-all answer for every single case like this, but for me it definitely helped because it allowed me to pace out the character arcs for all of the main cast, including both the heroes and the villains. And then even eventually, once we knew that we wanted to do something more with Raccoon, for instance, as kind of unexpectedly, I was able to pace things out with that as best as I could. And that ended up being a really, really heartfelt part of the show, and had a great wrap up to it in the very last part of the story. Without revealing too much, I'm trying to be as vague as possible to people who may have not seen the show before, but yeah, having a fair amount of stuff planned ahead of time. Both the general number of episodes, like of installments in general that I was going to be doing ahead of time, allowed me to know, okay, by the time that I get to the end of this, this has had to have happened to all of these characters, and these are all the things that they have to go through to get to that point. So I can, pace out each of those things in the individual stories that lead up to the finale of this big overall story. The next thing, assumingly some of this, like in just the conceptual phase, will like start to form itself, but really it comes to life when you're beginning production on it. Is finding the general tone of not just your story, but the universe that you're setting it in. In terms of when you're writing actual material, like for episodes or the movie itself or the game or whatever it is, again, whatever medium you're choosing. Finding the individual voices, not literally, but figuratively, as in like the writing styles for each of your characters, how exactly they're going to be speaking, what would they do? What is it that they want? What are they going after? What is their motivation? Why do they matter to the overall story and everything? Making sure that that everything is flowing interestingly together and that it fits within the vision and of what you're trying to go for. And then of course, the other kind of like, I guess aesthetic kind of things, like, the type of music you want to go with, voice actors as well, depending, I more so like the direction style of the voice performances, color choices, the locations you want to go with, establishing your world very clearly. In my case with Tome, actually people in general with me, people who know my work know that I love bright colors. I love lots of variation. I love, Power Rangers type, of motifs, I guess you could say, with, not just my main team of heroes, but like really everybody to some extent. In the case of Alpha and the gang, they were very like bright, especially by season 2, for better or worse, because I know not everybody loved that, but the kind of color coded, specific types of things that I went with. And then even on the hacker team, I went with more kind of like gross, like kind of colors, more sickly kind of things. And then something kind of like more sinister for especially the leaders, and then really extravagant, like unique kind of color schemes in particular for the Net Kings, who became big players in the second season as well. In tandem with that too, kind of connecting everything together, that kind of also, all these things help dictate each other in some way, if you can blend them together as best as you can, like having the general setting of the show being, it's a bunch of kids getting together and experiencing a big story that happens to them. The story that is happening to them, not like it is a story, it's a real thing happening to them in universe. But about, on this like virtual reality video game. So the video game type of motif is what, led to the type of environments that I was picking, the kind of like special effects with like the login beam and the data streams and, messenger screens and all that rhymed. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you. Good. Anyway, as well as the music, for instance, having more or less the Super Nintendo-y type of stuff, like the chiptune kind of thing that Kadget went for, as well as a lot of the guest musicians, and then certain cases where we'd have like more extravagant things like the orchestral stuff that Stephen Kelly did and the remixes that Tombstone did, etc. All kind of working together. And, and that all goes back specifically to what it's all linked together. The setting, the story, the characters, all of that stuff works together, and you kind of have to form something, all these little individual elements that make sense as to why, you're going with them in the first place. So for Tome, it was, virtual reality video game world, was, going again, even with like the bright colors, like I had a lot of like, poppy upbeat sort of, iconic Nintendo type of, tunes and things, which Kadget stuff was great for. When it would take a more serious turn at certain points, it would, so therefore would the music, but it would still be in line with the kind of motif we were using and everything. So all that stuff was working together and making what was hopefully a unified type of product and everything. Those are more things that I'm trying to more think of a little bit further in depth with for future things that I produce in terms of like, thematically and which is the big final factor that I'm going to get to later. The next thing I would say, I was teasing about this earlier, but the production things, the more technical side of things that you have to keep in mind, like how difficult is it to execute certain aspects of making what it is that you want to do, and then planning ahead for it. For the most part, the story that I wanted to tell wasn't so much impacted by this. I think it was more so on the animation front, so I won't dwell too much on that because it's more about story. But I'll say, by using the video game type motif thing, for instance, that was what helped dictated stuff like the talking avatars and the text boxes, where I could, have certain scenes of characters just sitting around talking to each other be just those like Tales of series type of skit cutscenes with just the recyclable animations and the text boxes and all that stuff, having the different fonts for all the characters and everything like that, and that was also something that allowed me to keep in mind, okay, I can have this be a cut for cost. By doing a scene like this in an episode, that saves a lot of time and a lot of animation that I have to do because it's just this easy to produce type of thing. And it makes sense as to the visual style of what I'm trying to go for with the show in the first place. So again, it's all connected back to the same, goal of what you're doing with it and everything. And that was something that I had to keep in mind and plan ahead with. I think that was also like that stuff and like the sprites that I was using and thinking that I was probably going to have a lot less, actual real animation with the characters, which as the show progressed, they got to be more and more and more and more. But as I, was able to, hone my skills and keep producing stuff faster, I was still able to do that as much as I possibly could. And get everything done in a reasonable fashion. It wasn't an episode a month like I was thinking I was going to be able to do, but it was still a fair amount of content in an admirable amount of time, I would say. For producing a show like this with such a small team that I was, as always, very blessed with, and a fan base that I was very blessed with to help fund it, and support it over all this time. And speaking of them, because you got to consider your audience. The next factor is keeping things varied and interesting enough between both the cast of characters and the plot progression itself to make things, engaging and keeping everybody on board with the story. So that was what also kind of went back earlier. I was saying about, planning how many installments I was going to do, knowing what each episode was going to cover, knowing like, okay, the tournament will be 2 episodes. It'll be, 4 episodes or originally 3 episodes. Of all the characters kind of being established, doing some different stories with different combinations of characters, whether it was all 5 of them together or only 3 of them at the same time or whatever, and different combinations of recurring characters being around there depending, a different villain to befit whatever the situation was, that sort of stuff. Then having, all the characters preparing for the tournament, knowing that that's going to be coming up. Then the 2 episodes about the tournament, as well as what became the kind of unofficial 3rd tournament episode, which was just the Alpha versus Zeto big fight back in the stadium kind of thing. And then, of course, the Net King battles, and then the infiltration mission, and then the big finale at the end. So it was kind of like a roadmap that I built with the number of episodes, the general number of episodes that I was planning on having from the beginning. And then from there, with these little mini arcs, I guess you could say, I was coming up with what was going to happen in each of the individual stories and what significant things had to happen in each one. Even episode 4, which for those of you who don't know, again, from some of the behind the scenes stuff, that was added after the fact. I wrote 8 episodes all the way up until the end of the tournament, and then when we thought that 4 might be the last one, I added that episode, what became Fragged Quest, as the possible last one because I wanted to have something that was, lighthearted and fun and had all 5 of the main characters together, in one thing. And that proved to be awesome because what it accomplished was just further establishing how close those characters were supposed to be. And that was really important because that lent itself to, the big major factor that I'm going to get to that I should have thought about from the beginning. But again, I'll get to that. But yeah, so stuff like that was what allowed me to pace out, these big moments. In fact, you know what? I'll just say this. We'll just get to the last thing. The final thing, and really what it is it should be way back at the beginning. It should be in the conceptual stage. The problem is this was probably more than anything, well, maybe not. I don't know. I think that it was my biggest mistake. Some people might disagree with that. But I think my biggest mistake was not remembering this incredibly important factor into any story that you're going to develop and create and execute in no matter what medium it is what is the theme? What is the real theme, the meaning behind what it is, what your story is? Like, what are you saying with this story? The reality is that Tome was just a series of cool moments that I wanted to, execute with them. And, each of the characters had development. They each, were growing and learning and changing and had what was all 5 of them in particular, the main characters specifically, and some of the side characters as well, like Raccoon and Kizuna, etc. They all had a firm beginning, middle, and end, and they were satisfactory to, a lot of the folks that watched the show, and I'm proud of what we did with them. But I feel like really what it was that as I determined later, because I didn't realize what the main theme of Tome was until after the fact, and I think that what it was ended up being in episode 4, which was added after the fact. And it came down to because I'll just spoil this, even if you guys haven't seen it, but there's a scene in episode 4 where all 5 of the characters, the main characters, are sitting together in kind of like a campfire type of area, waiting for something to happen related to the plot of the episode, of course, not just for no reason. And they're talking about, like the prospect of maybe meeting up with each other at some point because they're really getting to know each other and really hanging out. And they've spent so many hours together and really care about each other and have grown to care about each other, over all the time they've been playing this game, over however long it's been in universe by that point. And that was kind of it's weird because that was even like one of the first scenes that I ever wrote, and I ended up working it into an episode that wasn't even part of the story until way later. I think that scene was just going to be like a standalone short or something at one point. I can't remember, but either way, the point is that scene embodies the theme that I wasn't really even thinking of, and I think the reason that it wasn't even occurring to me is because it was stemming just from an experience that inspired the show in the first place, which is, again, or not even again, because I haven't said it yet, for fuck's sake, I keep stalling, sorry. That theme is, you can find friends that will care for you like family, that you can be so close to, and they'll always be there for you, and they can be, they can feel like your family in the strangest places, like the internet. Even on the internet, you can find people that you bond so incredibly strongly with, that they become like your family, and you go through these incredible experiences with them. And, of course, that all stemmed from not just, the origin of the show's creation itself, which was, when Mike, Lucas, and I were on the TV Tome forums, and we met a lot of our first friends and everything, our first internet friends, that is, and our first friends in general. But also the people that I met through all my years on, like, Newgrounds and doing the Wachow podcast back in the day even, and, like, from YouTube and from Twitter and from all these different places, and just over Skype, and the voiceover community and the animation community and all these different places that, a lot of these people have grown to be, some of my closest friends that I've known for many, many years now. And a lot of them I even do consider to be like my family, including actually a lot of the people that have been working on Tome with me for all these years now. Not even just the people that it's funny, the characters that, the people that the characters in Tome are based off of, really, Mike is the only one that I know and have not know, obviously, but that have stayed friends with after all this time and have still remained that close to, like the characters in the show are. But now the people who have helped me make the series that, that whole idea was inspired by in the first place have become really close, especially when we got to hang out together at Anime Expo and we had this really amazing bonding experience together, and it was incredible. That kind of stuff was, it's kind of ironic in that way. But yeah, it all stemmed from that experience. Like that main theme of the story of the show in general is where that came from. But I feel like, and maybe it did shine through. I feel like it probably did for a lot of people, even without me like putting a big cognitive thought into it specifically. Because I've had a lot of really, really nice messages from people who have watched the show, and I appreciate this if any of you are listening, who have told me like, oh, like I really related to the show and it cheered me up because it reminded me of like how great my internet friends are and how much they care about me and how much I care about them, which is awesome because that is the point of it. That's what it's supposed to be. And, it's interesting because like, okay, for instance, and this is part of the reason why I was trying to wait until I saw Zootopia, but Zootopia's main theme is in the main theme song, which is Try Everything. I won't spoil much about the actual movie, but I mean, the point of it is that it's about being open to trying everything, even things that you might be afraid of, even things that you might not understand. You have to be open to try, and especially if like you want to grow and learn and be a better person and maybe even make the world a better place, you have to be able to learn. You have to be able to open to try anything and everything, and not shut yourself off to things that you're either afraid of or don't understand. And it's one challenge to find a purpose, a meaning, a theme, your statement with what you're doing. It's one challenge to find that and have it be something that's like, new and meaningful and hopefully positively impactful in some kind of way. It's another challenge in and of itself to execute it in a way that's not, beating you over the head with it, being clever with it in a way that is impactful. Because you don't want to bury it too much, in which case it's just like, oh, okay, well, I didn't really connect with that. I don't really understand like what I was supposed to take away from that experience. But you also don't necessarily want it to be like a, beating you over the head with it like a Saturday morning cartoon, justice and saving the earth and believe in yourself kind of shit, because then that's obnoxious. Unless it's like aimed very, very young, in which case that's perfectly fine. That just kind of goes with, the concept of whatever the story is, of course. But, I think I would say even it's better to, have it be something, just integrated into the execution of the story itself, and not just be like, remember kids, today we learned that blah, 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 fucking blah, where it's just like, okay, great, I don't get, now you're just lecturing me kind of shit, You don't necessarily want to do that. Again, depending on the age range, but I would even argue that for kid stuff too, it's better to like just integrate those kind of morals into the execution of the story itself, as opposed to just, spelling it out so fucking obviously. But again, that even in and of itself could be a whole other subject. And this too, like all of these things could be different subjects that I could go on about for a long time, but it has to do more with my process. So to get back to that, I think another important thing that became kind of clear to me, and this is sort of going deeper with the idea of just, like you can find, amazing friends anywhere, even on the internet kind of, theme to it, is just a lot about trust between people, and trust and communication between people. The true threat of the story of the show was, I guess, the almost sort of man versus nature type of things, because the hackers were mostly harmless in terms of they weren't like, causing any real pain to people in that kind of way. But it was more so the virus, the science fiction-y type of stuff that I had in there that was the real threat in terms of, causing harm to people. And because those are, they're computer programs, not nature, but in that same kind of idea of like, an unpredictable force is what it is that was potentially going to be bringing harm to everybody. But the villain again, the antagonistic positioned characters are a little more gray. They're not just flat out like, we're evil, we're doing something bad, because a lot of them were actually trying to do something that they considered to be good. Even the ones that were the most like villains were, well, except for maybe one, and which one I'm talking about, guys, but I won't say who they are. But by and large, they were all doing something, even if it was selfish or even if it was, ill-placed or whatever, it was with some kind of positive intention. That's a whole other subject, again, is about villains, and I might have had one about that at some point probably, but either way. But it goes back to the bit about trust. There were trust issues between all 5 of the main characters about different things that they, considered to be important to them, that they didn't necessarily want to spill onto other people for this and that reason. And actually, even, what happened with Raccoon, without, going, as I want people to experience that for themselves, especially for how hard Mac worked on it with me. That was an entire, like, that was kind of a cautionary tale about, about communication and trust between people who are supposed to care about each other and just sometimes are too, pig-headed to realize what it is that they're doing, and, or know what they're doing and are just making the wrong kind of choice. That too, even the other characters I'm talking about, and, if you know the story, you know which ones, but making bad choices and how they can impact the people that you care about. I think a lot of stuff like that definitely did shine through, but I think that if I had been more aware of exactly what it is that I was doing, that was the moral that I was integrating into it. I feel like there are certain things about the story that I could have executed better. That's, a hindsight of 2020 kind of thing. So all I can really hope is that my wanting to have these cool moments, these moments that I personally identify with, that were based on my own personal experiences with people, and, in some sense, not fully based on, but definitely inspired by, issues that I have had, and lessons that I learned, and good and bad experiences that I had that I kind of integrated into this overall story. I can only hope that the themes that came from those experiences and put into these kind of cool moments are, what kind of gave the voice to the show in that kind of way, and hopefully had a positive impact on people. And the show did. But my strive, what I'm striving for, and my goal for future productions, tone related or otherwise, is to think more in depth about that aspect of things. And that has to be, at the beginning. That has to be at the first stage of creation. Like, what is it that I'm saying with the story of whatever this is that I'm creating, kind of thing, And I think that I'm very grateful that I've learned a lot more about that stuff in just the last few years from a lot of really great movies and shows and games and stories in general that I've experienced. That's made me like more self-aware of that sort of thing. And now I can only hope that, when I'm developing stories for a few different things right now, all of which are things that I intend to hopefully do at some point. And I'm really trying to like get to the heart of like, okay, what is it that I'm saying? I've talked about that many, many times, especially in like this last year or so's Kirblogs. You guys have probably heard me say that many times of like, what am I saying? What am I really trying to say with this thing? And it sounds like very like airy-fairy or whatever, but it's true. It's true, and that is something important. That is something that I need to spend more time, really figuring out with all of these things that I want to do, because there is something buried in each of them. They're not all just built for the sake of just like, that's just dumb entertainment. Sometimes they are, but even like Parody Rangers had some stuff like that in there, and whatever. If it's just like pure comedy, it's like, yeah, okay, it's fine. It can just be entertaining, and that's okay. But I mean, my main goal is I want to do something that has like real heart to it, something that has something that you can take away from it that is important and impactful and will make you think. I mean, I walked away from Zootopia being really excited about it and knowing a lot of things about it too ahead of time, because I watched all the trailers and I'd had half the fucking scene spoiled for me. But my God, like I felt like a changed human being after I saw that movie. And Disney is like the cream of the cream of the crop. They're like the best when it comes to animation and animated storytelling, especially in the last couple of years. They are like top notch right now and like back to form. Or maybe not even back to form. They've improved like significantly since even like the golden age or whatever. I'd say we're in kind of like a platinum age for Disney movies right now, because they're batting a fucking 1,000. And honestly, when I left that theater, I thought, man, if I could even make something like a fraction as good and as good as in like as life changing as like much of an incredible experience as that was, that's the type of thing that I'm striving for, and that's the type of thing that I want to think more about in whatever it is that I produce now, whether it's another show like Tome, whether it's like I ever actually got a TV show someday or something like that, or something, or a movie or a video game or a book even, probably not, but whatever. All of that in mind, like that sort of thing. That's really, I wish so much that I can do that, and that I can have something more like that with more real thought and experience put into it. That's my goal. So yeah, for the time being, and for the amount of knowledge that I possess and the amount of stuff that I've created, that's my answer to how I write my stories and what type of decisions go into the production of my stories. So Deathinator, I hope that answered your question and maybe helps you or anybody else listening right now. My answer may very well change in just the next year or so as I continue to learn more. Because so far, again, I've been able to stick very, very well to my New Year's resolution of 2016, or for 2016 that is, of learning and doing better and being better. I've had 2 really solid, amazing months. We're now, of course, into our first week of March already, but a lot has happened. It's been really great. I feel awesome about everything so far. I think I'm on a really good path right now. And I can only hope that with all the stuff that I've learned and all the improvements that I can make on myself and on my work, that, what comes next after Tome will be even bigger and better. But I hope that my big, long-winded 40-plus minute answer as to the process of how Tome was made, did shed some light on things. I hope it was interesting. I hope it was helpful in some way. And that's going to wrap us up for now. I think I have some further things to go about in this kind of string of topics that I've been doing about, being a creative and working on stuff like this in the first place. I think I have some more stuff I want to talk about, some other topics tucked away, but this is a big one that I was building up to. I hope you all enjoyed it, and that's going to do it. So in the comments below, let me know your thoughts about this, and if you have suggestions for future Kirblog topics related to this or otherwise, leave a comment about that too. Or hit me up on Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook, etc. I'm forgetting my own end tag that I say for 200 plus Kirblogs now, or however many that I've done at this point. But that'll do it. So thank you all for listening. Thanks again, Deathinator, for the great question. and I will catch you all next time. Oh, and hey, to all future creators who are aspiring to make something, in whatever medium and whatever way you want, good luck to you. And you know what? Aim to do something far better than I've ever made. Reach for the fucking stars. Do your best. And I hope that what I've said here and what you've heard today, if it was any good advice, that it helped in some way to on your journey as well. So, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you all later. Bye bye.